Kenya's public debt has been increasing at an alarming rate in the last 8 years. As of June this year, our public debt was 6.6 trillion shillings. But how does debt affect the citizen beyond the common statements such as each Kenyan citizen, including those being born now, owes creditors at least 139,000 shillings due to public debt? So, beyond the cliches, what does it mean when the government keeps on getting loans?
Lakini lazima tutafute pesa kwa sababu zetu hazitoshi, ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba the needs of the people are also met. But we must borrow, which I agree, in a manner that we are sure we can actually service the debt that we incur.
From 2013 to 2019, we've seen our public debt go from almost 1.2 trillion to about 6 trillion.
You see, the whole economy is crumbling.
When government has no revenues to invest in the economy, it means that everyone is going to suffer, and most of the time, it's the young people and the vulnerable people in the economy who will suffer most.
Is Kenya on the verge of a debt distress? What is the implication of that moving forward? Africa Uncensored digs deep into these questions, seeking answers and highlighting how the appetite for foreign debt-financed infrastructure has devastated various sectors in the country.
My name is Ken Gishinga. The issue of Kenyan debt has been a long journey. And let me first start by saying that debt in of itself is not a problem. Almost every country in the world has debt. Typically for any government, debt is normally paid through taxes. There are only two ways governments raise revenue. One is through taxes. So the big challenge we are facing in terms of managing our public debt is the economy has not been doing very well. So a lot of businesses are not able to provide the taxes that government needs to be able to service its debt.
In 2013, Kenya's debt was 1.8 trillion shillings when Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto took over the government from President Kibaki. The debt has tripled to about 6.7 trillion shillings in just 7 years, even surpassing the recommended debt to GDP ratio. The debt to GDP ratio is used to compare what a nation owes with what it produces. It also indicates the ability of the country to pay back its debt. The higher the debt to GDP ratio climbs, the higher the risk of defaulting on the debt. According to Treasury, the debt to GDP ratio is at 65.7%. IMF recommends that the ratios of public debt to GDP should not be higher than 40% for developing countries. Kenya first breached the debt threshold in 2016 when it rose to 50.6% of GDP. But why should this be of concern when some developed nations have surpassed their debt to GDP ratios by triple-digit numbers?
Of course we're in debt.
So how do we deal with that?
By the way, when you talk about our debt, do you know what the debt of the Japanese government is? Or what is Japan's debt?
I'm not really concerned about
Do you know what the Kenyan debt is?
Yes.
What is it?
As I said.
What is it?
Right now, some figures at 4.5 trillion shillings.
Don't
4.8.
talk about, I said, as a percentage of GDP. Talk like an economist.
56% of GDP.
Of GDP?
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
What is Japan's debt?
I'm not in Japan, so I'm not concerned about
Japan's
Japan.
debt is over 100% of their GDP. Japan. Okay? All right? Because, my friend, the issue of debt is not about incurring debt. It's about how you use that debt.
A lot of people say that the US has over 100% debt to GDP. Japan has the highest in the world, 200% GDP. But we forget that these countries, first of all, borrow in their own currency. The US will borrow in dollars and Japan will borrow in yen. So in the worst case scenario, they can really print their way out of that debt.
Out of the 6.7 trillion shillings debt, foreign currency debt is 3.5 trillion shillings, up from 569.1 billion shillings in June 2010. Kenya's largest foreign currency lender is China, which accounts for over 70% of the external bilateral debt with a portfolio of approximately $6.2 billion, which largely come on semi-concessional terms.
If it's non-concessional, most probably it's a commercial loan that will come, like some of them we saw coming from China, where you need to pay them in less than 10 years. You'll begin paying the interest within less than 10 years. And that's what many people have been asking questions. So if government invests, say, in a road or invests in a railway line, would you say that within 6 to 10 years, the investment has been plowed back into the economy to the extent that we are able to collect taxes to begin to repay that loan? It's not possible. It does not make economic sense. So my name is Kenneth Okwaro. I work with the Africa Center for People, Institutions and Society. Our organization does research in public policy and analysis around how governments implement policies and how they impact the lives of their citizens.
The main difference when one borrows in foreign currency such as the dollar as opposed to borrowing in local currency such as the shilling is that the borrower is exposed to currency risk. So, for instance, if today a young farmer by the name Wanjiku takes 1,000 loan from a bank at the exchange rate of 100 shillings, she will take home 100,000 shillings. When her loan matures in a year, what Wanjiku will pay back will depend on the changes in the value of the dollar against the shilling. If the shilling gained against the dollar and the exchange rate is 90 shillings, she will be smiling to the bank because she will pay back 90,000 shillings plus the interest. However, if the shilling weakened against the dollar to the rate of 110, she will pay back 110,000 shillings plus the interest. So, when Kenya borrows in foreign currency, we are exposed to such dynamics, and in current times we have been on the losing end as the shilling has not been gaining but weakening.
Problem with debt is if you use it to consume. All right? I am confident that Kenyan debt, which is why it is so solid, is for infrastructural development that will benefit not just our generation, but future generations.
Are we borrowing for the right reasons? In many cases, the initial reasons why it begins are very noble. We want a road that is going to connect this place to this other place to increase, movement and transportation and stuff. But eventually, either we change those plans, we adjust them, we increase the costs, then it just becomes weird.
My name is Chang Ping, a freelancer. I'm writing for Deutsche Welle, Germany, and Upper Daily in Hong Kong. China has bigger ambitions and longer-term plans. There is an official document called China's Second Africa Policy Paper, published in December of 2015. In this lengthy document, we can find the words economy, culture, society, political parties, governments, military, technology, almost everything except democracy, freedom, and human rights. This is the essential core of the Chinese model. The point is not so much the debt trap itself, but how much power African people and African countries have to negotiate.
Most of the China loans are for building infrastructure, and they come with conditions such as Chinese contractors are given the contracts to implement the projects. Some of the projects implemented through the loans include the Lamu Port 3 bus for 48 billion shillings and the SGR project, Mombasa to Nairobi, which cost 327 billion shillings. The latter has been an emotive and controversial subject among many Kenyans.
I think the challenge most economists have wrapping their mind around it is the fact that over $3 billion was spent to it, about 320 billion shillings. When people benchmark with other countries, it becomes very expensive. When you look at Ethiopia, even if the landscape of Ethiopia is different, but generally if you look at SGRs around the world and look at it per kilometer basis, people feel we paid way too much.
Despite growing concern about the cost of the SGR, the Nairobi-Mombasa project was completed and launched in May 2017, just 3 months to the general election. This came with a promise of a better and prosperous future for the port of Mombasa and a boost in the economy of the coastal region.
And the investments that we're making can only increase the level of business for Mombasa Port and increase the number of people who will be employed in this port. That will increase the prosperity of the people of Mombasa.
Even though they were promised a brighter future as a result of the SGR, this was far from the truth.
Mimi naitwa Salim Karama. Mimi ni mfanyaji biashara wa transport na makazi yangu ni Mombasa. Tumekuwa na kazi ya transport kwa muda mrefu, manake ilikuwa ni ya wazee. Lakini kufikia miaka hii ya karibuni 2-3, mambo yalibadilika kibiashara Mombasa. Kwa hivyo tumepata madhara makubwa kibiashara transport kutokana na wakati SGR ama serikali ikilazimisha makasha yapakiliwe kwa njia ya treni.
In a bid by the government to increase its revenues to enable payment of the SGR loan, the Ministry of Transport gave a directive that all goods from the port of Mombasa had to be transported through the SGR to the Nairobi Inland Container Depot. This directive was later on reversed, but the Mombasa economy has never recovered.
What we came to engage the national government about is how do we handle the transition? What mitigation measures should be put in place so that the residents, the business people, stakeholders can live side by side with the SGR.
And we said that because the directive had been issued by the CG of KRA and the MD of KPA without full consultations, within 2 days actually, we directed that it be reversed and it remains suspended.
However, the business community still feels the impact of the directive several months after the CS claimed to have reversed it.
Imeniathiri mimi kama mimi Salim Karama. Kuna vijana ambao ilikuwa nimewaajiri kazi katika hizi truck. Mimi nilikuwa na truck 2. Truck moja zimekaa, imebidi nipeane mtu ile kichwa. Ndio ile kichwa nilikwambia nilipeana kwa sababu hakuna kazi.
Salim laments that he had a thriving business before the introduction of the SGR cargo train, but that is not the case anymore.
Mimi sahi kama vile nilivyokuambia, hakuna income yoyote ambayo mimi napata kwa muda wa 1.5 mpaka dakika hii. Hii gari unaona hapa ni yangu. Hii gari ilikuwa na insurance comprehensive, imekufa hapa ndani ya yadi. Kwa hivyo mimi sahi ni mwasirika mkubwa sana katika hali ya kiuchumi, na yote imechangiwa na viongozi wetu ambao wanafanya ubwenyenye ama ule ukoloni mamboleo.
My name is Dennis Ombok. I'm the CEO for Kenya Transporters Association. The times are very hard with transporters because actually most of the transporters don't have the job and most of them close shops. You know, if you have a truck, the truck only makes money when the turnaround is high. When the truck's idling, there's no money for that truck. It wears off. So sometimes you may be able to service it and it's not doing anything. So you service it, put parts, but then there's no money that it brings. So these trucks, we need them to be on the road.
A research conducted by the University of Nairobi School of Business in Mombasa last year revealed that Mombasa's economy will decrease by over 16% and over 8,100 jobs lost as a result of transporting cargo from the port of Mombasa through the SGR. The report goes further on its finding and states, I quote, "In the event the proposal to convey all up-country cargo through the SGR, then the implication to the port city of Mombasa's GDP and employment sustainability will be serious."
Niko na almost 1 year sijafanya kazi mahali. Majina yangu ni Ismail Rashid, truck driver. Hiyo ndio kazi yangu. Naona. ambapo hakuna mtu ambaye atakakaa bila kazi, ushaona. Lakini unajikuta huko kazini na si watu ndio umetaka usiwe kazini, ushaona. Changamoto moja ni kama hivyo sasa, kazi pia zimepungua, ushaona. Kwa sababu mwenyewe nasema, sisemi yani siwezi jisifu hata profession, but I can say I'm a profession because nishafanya kazi hata nje. Nishafanya Saudia as a truck driver. Ushaona. Nimezunguka Saudia yote ile. All capital cities kwa tuna. Ushaona. Sasa I don't deserve to stay without a job for 1 year, ushaona, as a professional driver. Unaona. Tena in your country. Mpaka sasa hata mimi nilikuwa niondoke niende Kuwait.
Rashid had prepared to leave the country in search of opportunities in the Middle East. However, just as soon as his visa came, the corona pandemic hit the world and his plans failed, so his only alternative was to continue looking for jobs locally.
Unaenda kwa play mahali tajiri, unakuta kwambia angalia gari zimesimama. Paka inabidi asampigia simu tu kila saa, vipi bosi bado upo? Paka anakuambia wewe hapa bado kijana wangu, lakini angalia kwingine kokote ambako ukipata kwingine wefanya. 1 year sasa siko kazi, paka sasa siko kazi. Na uko na family. Na unajua mahoma hayaulizi ile kugonjeka ile. Mtu kwa mgonjwa haiulizi ati una pesa ndio nikuje hapo nikuletee ugonjwa, nilete homa malaria, unaona.
Rashid believes that the SGR cargo train is the genesis of his problems.
Ni SGR of course. Yes, kwa sababu there is no time ati shendo za kazi mahali tena katika kampuni kama 3 ama 4. Ama hata mwenyewe ukikaa ukitembea katika hizi yadi as a driver unakuta trucks zimesimama hapo.
Though living in 2 different estates separated by the Mombasa Central Business District, Gabriel Nyange and Rashid Ismail have 2 things in common. They both worked in the transport sector and both are now jobless.
I'm the breadwinner of a very young family because I just got married 2 years ago and had my first daughter just approximately a year ago because she's now 7 months old. Okay, upande wa kazi, watu kama sisi tumeathirika sana. Manake kwa sababu hii SGR ilivyoanza kutoa kazi kutoka Mombasa to Nairobi, imebidi makampuni ama kampuni zetu kwa like me personally nimekuwa affected. Tumekuwa retrenched, tumepewa barua, turudi nyumbani. And unapata mtu kama mimi nilikuwa na loan already na kampuni. So unapata ile miaka yenye nimefanya